Welcome to the Completely Cricket Podcast, Week 3 Roundup of the IPL, and Rob Key as Managing Director. Huge gamble or right decision? If you're watching on YouTube, these will be separate videos, but if you're listening to the podcast, then it will be all in one. Without further ado, let's get started. So when we're looking at IPL this week, I think it's best to start with the table. The table's actually pretty interesting because there's been quite a bit of change because all the teams are in quite close points. Most teams have played 6 matches, a couple have played 5. I think Rajasthan Royals playing currently while we're recording, so we're not going to include that match as part of our highlights, which we're going to talk about later. I think when looking at the table, for me, the first thing I notice is the last position. The team with the wooden spoon at the moment haven't won a single of their matches is Mumbai Indians, who have not 0 points, who are pretty much quite a big shadow of their former selves and the 5-time IPL winning team, most recently in IPL 2020. It's a bit shocking, it's just seeing them be last at the table because it's something that you never see. It literally just doesn't happen. Zay, we did mention about why Mumbai Indians are stuck at the bottom. Do you think there's anything more specific after 6 matches have been nearly half the season already? Is there some key players that you could pinpoint that you could say that are pulling Mumbai Indians down and keeping the bottom of the table, and any changes that they might make?
I mean, it's an interesting one. Mumbai Indians, they've never really struggled this much. They've lost 6 matches, which is not a good start at all. They're nearly halfway through, and they haven't really got any points. And I just think I can't really pinpoint anyone, but maybe someone like Rohit Sharma. He's captain, but he hasn't really scored many runs, which is not very good. He has had a couple of starts, but still, he needs to get a move on. He's relying on players such as Ishan Kishan, who's had a decent time of it, but still, just a lot of their players just haven't really performed. And so I just think they've just lost a lot of their players. By last year, year before, we had an excellent combination of Jasprit Bumrah and Trent Bolt opening the bowling. Now they've lost Trent Bolt, and Bumrah's not even opening bowling anymore. It's more like someone like Untitled or Tamar Mills. They're not opening bowling, but they're one of the main bowlers, which is quite concerning actually, because you have someone like Untitled. He's not the first bowler I'd look at. When I look at an IPL side, I want to look at someone like Trent Bolt or Bumrah, but he's actually turning out to be one of the most important bowlers, which is very concerning. And I just think Mumbai Indians, they're just lacking of. Obviously, they've lacked confidence, which is it's the kind of the mental side of the game. But I just think it's really their players that they can't perform, and obviously losing matches is going to make them do even worse. And I just think they've just lost a lot of their players.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially fans of other teams other than Mumbai Indians, will pretty much say, all the teams have had the mega auction, all the teams have had a big shuffle in their players. Obviously except for Gujarat Titans and Lucknow Super Giants because they're 2 new teams, but all the other teams have lost a lot of their key players. Yet they're still teams in the top 4, top 6 who are doing really well. So why Mumbai specifically? Is it that their key players have been lost, or is it more to do with the players that they've got in replacement haven't been good enough?
Yeah, it might be like that. I just think it's just a little bit I wouldn't say it's the players that they've lost is really crucial. Obviously, everyone's lost some crucial players. Some like Sunrisers are doing pretty well now. They lost the first 2, then they won their next 4, which is really good. And they lost someone like Rashid Khan, which is a huge loss. They're still doing well. So I kind of think it's interesting. Mumbai Indians, just their sort of replacements. Now at this point, they're kind of relying on someone like Del Brevins, who's not even 19 yet, and that's huge pressure on him. And he's performing, but you can't rely on someone who's so young, which is just that's not really acceptable. You've got to rely on your big players like Rohit Sharma. Khan has not had a good time with it. Ishan Kishan is still young. All these players then just not performing. These top teams, someone like SRH, they've got a young player, Abhishek Sharma is doing well, Kane Williamson's doing decently, or something like Rajasthan Royals. Everyone's lost some players, but it's Rajasthan was especially, they've still got their big players performing, all these top teams. It's just Mumbai Indians, they've lost players, but I just think their top players are still not performing.
So yeah, I think that's pretty fair. The key players that they've kept, so they've decided to, they try to keep the framework of their team. They aren't performing, so they're not really a framework anymore. There's just nothing to build upon. I think for me, I would pinpoint the bowling, to be fair. I just think that if you're Trent Bolt's gone and you've lost a key part of your seam attack, and then Jasprit Bumrah's not opening the bowling, which I just think is ridiculous considering he's arguably India's best bowler and is better than any other bowler on the Mumbai Indians team by far. I think it's just all their replacements have really struggled. Timar Mills is not looked good at all. I just don't, because we've seen him do really well in the T20 Blast and even for England. He's done well in franchises across the world, but when he's come to the IPL, he doesn't look like he's in control. Like a key element of like Timar Mills' bowling is being able to execute those Yorkers, slow balls with complete control. But he doesn't really seem like he can control where the ball's going, and that's actually worrying as a bowler, as a pace bowler, because if you're going to bowl balls that just can be, freebies that can be easily hit, you're going to be hit in the IPL because of the quality of the batters. This isn't like, some club game where, if you bowl a bad ball, the chances are you're not going to be hit for it. It's like the top stage. In terms of Mumbai Indians batting, you did mention, they've got three young players in their top four. They've got David Brevis, Ishan Kishan, and I think, is it Tilak Sharma, I think? Yeah, so they've got three young players, as long with Rohit Sharma as well, making up top four, for example. Surya Kumar Yadav, number 5. When you've got three young players, you can't expect them to perform every single day in, day out. So they're like, hit and miss players. Then you've got your two sort of rocks of the team, you should sort of feel is like Surya Kumar Yadav and Rohit Sharma. Neither has been performing really well. Do you think there's anyone that Mumbai Indians have in their squad that could be like replaced or anything, to like move the squad, so take some people out, put new ones in that could like just give Mumbai that boost they need to perform the rest of the season?
Yeah, I don't really think so. And even if there was, like, would you really want to get another like new player, young player already? Like you've got 3, as you said, in that top 4. If you want to find more players, that's not really going to be any good. Like you still need experience, which is the issue that Mumbai Indians have got. I think they've made so many changes. They've got so many young players in their team, and the experienced players are really struggling. But you can't really bring any more young players in, which is really the issue. And Mumbai Indians, they've really got to get something out. Okay, it doesn't look like they're going to do well for the rest of this season, but they've got to look in the future. Something like they need to look at what they're going to do next year. They've got to start making plans now, trying out new stuff in matches. Now obviously it depends on what status is in the camp. They still think that they got a chance, which I don't think they do. But obviously a lot of IPL teams are pretty optimistic. But if they decided that, okay, this may not be our year, then they should. I would think they should just try out new things, try out new combinations, which is what they've been doing. But they just keep going, keep trying, and then look at next year and the year after. So I just don't think they can really swap out yet for more young players, more new players. I don't think there's anyone in that squad that can really replace the likes of Rohit Sharma. It's just like or Surya Kumar Yadav. These players are like really good. It's just they're just not performing at the moment, which is really the issue that Mumbaians have got.
Yeah, I think we sort of come to a conclusion that Mumbai have got to find it within themselves to start performing in their batting, and their bowling's obviously lost a lot of its potential. It's the quality in the bowling is completely gone, I think, and they've got, as I think I mentioned this last episode, they've sort of hoovered up some talent hoovered up players that have been sort of discarded by previous IPL franchises in like previous years. Like people like Murugan Ashwin, like as a spinner, like he's a main like spinner as a leg spinner, and he has very limited control and rarely takes wickets, just gets slogged every match. And the Mumbai Indians are in the position where they have to play him because they don't really have any other alternative, and that's dangerous. Players like Rahul Chahar was like instrumental to Mumbai's performances over the last few years. He's such a good spinner, and he plays for the India team as well, which means it shows how good he is. And they've lost him, and then their replacement isn't at that same level. So yeah, it's just generally a combination of batters not performing, not got a good quality bowling attack. But hopefully they can find it within themselves and at least win a few matches to put them in contention of finishing the top 4. But it's going to be tough. I think sort of the opposite to Mumbai, Sunrisers Hyderabad. Last couple of seasons have been pretty much rock bottom most times. They haven't really performed well. They lost their first 2 matches. A lot of people thought, it's the same thing as usual. But then they won the next 4 on the spot. And now they're in the top 4. They're actually 4th place. And they're looking really comfortable. I was just having a look at the results of Mumbai Sunrisers over the last 4 matches, the ones they've won. And I think a noticeable trend is that they're keeping the other team to a very low total. So, for example, last match they kept Punjab Kings 151 all out. The match before, KKR 175 for 8. These are all chaseable totals. So do you think what's really changed is their bowling attack because like suddenly started firing, or do you think it could also be the batting as well that's giving them that confidence for the bowlers to to bowl with freedom?
I think it's a bit of both, really. Like the bowlers that they've really started performing now. The first few matches are really struggling. The first match, Rajasthan Royals got like 200 or so, and then I just think it's a bit of both. The bowlers have really started performing. They've brought the scores down much more, and it was also like even when there's like I think when they played KKR, the KKR they still got a respectable total. I think it was 170 or 180, and SRH still chased that down. So it's like the bowlers have brought that score down, so it's easy for the batsmen. But even when there is like a decent total on the board, the batsmen have shown what they can do and have actually chased it down pretty comfortably. I think another trend I've noticed is that they've chased it down with quite a lot of wickets to spare. It's always like they've chased it down with 8 wickets to spare, 7 wickets to spare, 9 wickets to spare, whatever. It's just like their top four, top five is performing much more now. Someone like Abhishek Sharma, really, he's pretty young, but he's shown some great form with the bat and he's doing pretty well. So I just think it's a bit of both, not just the bowling. I think it's like the bowling has brought down the scores, making it easy for the batsmen who are now cashing in and being able to comfortably chase these scores down with which improves their net run rate as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think another trend I was just looking as well that they've all these matches, the last four that they've won, they've bowled first. So I think you mentioned in a few episodes ago, I think about the Q factor and the fact that if you bat second, the bowlers who bowl second don't have much control over the ball as much. They're especially spinners as well. So I think that might be playing into it. The fact they're batting second, they've bowled, they've had a good amount, and then now the new bowlers will just struggle a little bit more, and they capitalizing on it because, as you said, they've had won by 7 wickets, 7 wickets, 8 wickets, and 8 wickets in the last 4 matches, which is a lot of wickets in the IPL, and that just shows how solid their batting is. And then when they're bowling, they're doing the exact same thing. They're getting teams out really quickly, so it's been really good. It's a proper team effort, I think. But yeah, anyway, I think we'll move on to the highlights of the week. For me, there were quite a few big innings. I think in terms of matches, like there are 3 or 4 key matches. I think first one was Gujarat Titans versus Rajasthan Royals. This was a good match because it sort of represented something that we've been talking about on the Completely Cricket podcast, which is that the team that silences Josh Butler pretty much always wins. So like when you play Rajasthan Royals, like if Josh Butler can only score maximum like 50, 55, you're well within a chance of winning. But if he goes on and scores big innings, scores quickly, scores centuries, like he's just not stoppable. Like if you let him go past the 50 mark, you've lost the match because he's going to go for a big score. He doesn't really get out in like the low 50s very often. So in the match Gujarat Titans versus Rajasthan Royals, Josh Butler did get out for I think in the low 50s. It's a very rare occasion. Excuse me. Gujarat Titans scored 199 for 4, and Rajasthan Royals scored 155 for 9. And so I think it was a good example of what we're talking about. Any other highlights of that match? Did you say, Zaid? Do you think, Zaid?
Yes, it's just like I think for that match in particular, is like the way that Butler got silenced was Lockie Ferguson's incredible slow Yorker, which was quite brave of him to actually try that, and especially when you've got someone like Josh Butler who's completely firing, he's going at over 200 strike rate. So yeah, as you said, it's like kind of like the team that silences Butler wins. Rajasthan Royals, they got off to a flyer with Butler, but then they just couldn't find their A game for the rest of that match. So it's just like it's you could call it a bit of a concern for Rajasthan because like you can't just rely on Butler because he can't get those big 70s, 80s, 100s every match. He still scored pretty well. He scored a third of Rajasthan's final runs, which is it's good, but I don't think Rajasthan they've got to have I think other players step up. Someone like Sanju Samson, who's a great player, but he has been a bit low runs recently. Other players, Jaiswal was left out recently, and like these sorts of players, they just need to step up a little bit more, I think, and like then they can score more runs, and they don't have to rely on Butler, who will one day get out to some great ball, maybe he'll just get out, and like Lockie Ferguson, he showed his capabilities with that slow Yorker, which is excellent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I think that it's for me. I think that Rajasthan Royals do have a chance of winning the IPL, but they've got to stop relying on Josh Butler. It's not IPL isn't a one-man thing. It's not, even if someone scores 607 runs a season, you need the other bowlers to fire, you need other batters to fire. Otherwise, you can't make totals of 180 plus regularly. So that's something Rajasthan Royals really need to look at to strengthen their batting order, because they at the start of the just before the IPL started, the auction stuff, we did mention that Rajasthan did look quite light in batting, and it's shown in the matches that Josh Butler hasn't fired. Obviously, he's an international talent and he's probably their best player, but you can't expect him to fire every match. Nevertheless, he's doing good while he's scoring. I think he just scored a century while we're recording this episode. I think they're playing against Delhi Capitals and he scored a century. So while he fires, he's giving them a good chance. Another good Yorker was actually on display, and this is by Omran Malik in KKR versus Sunrisers Hyderabad. KKR scored 175 for 8, and Sunrisers Hyderabad scored 176 for 3 and 17.5. We did talk about Sunrisers just before, but this match, I think, for me, it was showed the progression of the Sunrisers because Omran Malik versus Shreyas Ayah, his Yorker, it was nearly 150 kilometers an hour, so rapid. Everyone knows Imran Malik is a rapid bowler. He's well known for that. But something that we haven't really seen recently is control, like especially last season. He didn't get too many chances either. I think as the IPL is going, do you think Imran Malik's starting to show a bit more control over his bowling in general, like letting in less runs? Because as a fast bowler, as fast as him, if you get a tiny bit of bounce on it, it's going to fly. So he needs that control. What do you think, Zay? Do you think he's evolving as a bowler?
It definitely needs that control, and I think he is getting a little bit more control now. Now he's gaining a bit more IPL experience, gaining a bit more experience at that top level. He's playing against some great players, and I think a bit of a trend I saw was that he was getting rid of the same figures and going at 9-10 over and getting like 1-2 wickets every match, and then he's doing pretty well now. He bowled that excellent ball to Shreyas Iyer. He's bowling pretty quick, 150, 153 clicks an hour, but I don't think pace is very good, but especially now in the modern day, I don't think pace is the main thing now. It's more like you got it, someone like Umesh Yadav, who's not the quickest. He is pretty quick, but he's not the quickest, but he just has consistent line length and gets a nice swing, which is why he's getting all his wickets. Someone like Umar Malik, he doesn't do that, but he's learning and he's coming through the ranks, and he's got some really good pace to bowl in the middle, bowl at the death and stuff. I just think his control, it's coming. It's lacking at the moment, but it's coming. I think with experience, it'll come even more. So the more he plays IPL, more he keeps playing cricket with top players, in the IPL and stuff like that. I think by the end of the season, he'll be looking pretty good, and I think he'll be ready for next season. Maybe in future international cricket, etc. So I think his control is coming, and with experience, it will come even more.
Yeah, something that interested me is that Sunrisers are bowling Umran Malik towards in the middle overs, like starting him. His spell normally starts around over 8-9, and then he continues throughout, and they do bowl him like 1 or 2 in the death overs. I just don't see the point. If you obviously considering how he's been quite expensive, like very expensive in the IPL in general last season and this season, why would you put him up top at the start? Like I would put him bowling first, open the bowling or bowl alongside the other bowler in the opening pair, just because then just rile the batsmen, your top batsmen, get them on their toes, get them nervous that short ball or fast deliveries, and you can easily make inroads into the batting, and also you won't let many runs because generally you have seen that IPL batters a lot, at least more than half the matches, they're quite tentative at the start. They're not going to, unless the bowler's bowling absolute in the slot deliveries, they're not going to go out and try and slog you. So I think, do you think that is the best strategies to bowl Umran Malik at the start and then give him a couple at the death, or do you think bowling him in the middle is a good idea?
It's an interesting one. At the top, Sunrise, they've got Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, who I definitely want to see him continue bowling at the top. He's a great bowler. And the other one, they've got Marco Jansen, who's inexperienced, but he's actually doing pretty well. So Umran Malik, it might be difficult for him to get into that top. And I just think when you come against someone like Rajasthan Royals, with Josh Butler, he's a good player of pace, and he's gonna bring out all his scoops and all that. He's gonna hit him for 6 and 4, and it's just interesting. I mean, it's possible, but I think for me, I would bowl him depending on the situation. I wouldn't want to bowl Umran Malik to a set batsman, especially because this is why I don't want him bowling over 8 or 9 unless it's a new batsman. The only time I want Umran Malik bowling is to a new batsman, because a new batsman may not find it that easy to play serious pace. They might want to face maybe some spin or something, someone like a bit of like a medium pace or a fast bowler, but not too quick. So for me, not a new batsman at the top. So as I said, someone like Josh Butler will cash in and literally, I'm sure he's gonna hit hard, but he could bowl at the top. But I just think the main thing for me, Umar Malik has got to bowl to new batsmen, because that's where I think the new batsmen can be most vulnerable. They'll be able to, Umar Malik can get his pace and get those full balls, short balls, whatever, and rough up the batsman. So I think for me, Umar Malik has got to bowl to new batsmen.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if I give you a scenario, how about if Bhuvaneshwar Kumar hasn't done too well? He's been slugged with, because I'm not convinced by Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. Like he's at times he's been like integral to the India team, and then sometimes he's been a bit in and out with injury as well. I just don't think, because he's not very fast. Excuse me. If he swings the ball, in the opening overs, I think he's pretty effective. But I don't know. I don't really see what he's not exactly a special bowler, for India. I think if India, I would open with like, Jasprit Bumrah, and then open with like Mohammad Shami as well. I don't know what Bhuvaneshwar Kumar just sort of seems like he's sort of your average bowler. So why would you, if Bhuvaneshwar Kumar or Marco Jansen starts getting hit a bit, would you continue going with them and bowl in 2 overs each, or 3 overs, each, and then their spell of 6, or would you put Imran Malik in straight away?
Yeah, so if that happened, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, if I continue Bhuvi and Marco Jansen, continuing them to bowl at the top, then the issue comes and I can't bowl Imran Malik, because then he's not going to be able to bowl to a new batsman. So then maybe he try him at the top and see how it goes. Maybe one game maybe not now at this point, because Sunrise are doing pretty well. They want to continue their run, and maybe they look to stay in that top 4 and get into the playoffs and stuff. But maybe at some point have a go at Umran Malik at the top, because if both those opening bowlers are struggling, then the batsmen are going to come into those middle overs pretty set. And Umran Malik, I can't really bowl him at a set batsman. I've got to bowl him at a new batsman, as I pointed out earlier. So in that case, then I would have a go at Umran Malik at the top and see how that goes. And then if he does well, then maybe have another go at the top. But if he doesn't do well, then he can stay in the middle how he's doing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's the one factor you have to have is put him to a new batter. If you put him to a set batter, with his pace, even if they edge it or something, it's just going to go flying. And you've seen that with a lot of fast bowlers this IPL. With batters who swing the bat like with a lot of rapid bat speed. With the speed of the ball, it will just go flying for 6, even if it was a good ball. Anyway, I think something else I want to talk about is pretty important is Aaron Finch, because he's been a key part of Australia's limited overs format teams for years. He's been all across the world. He's been very good in T20 cricket and T20 cricket and ODI cricket. In the IPL and in general since the 2019 World Cup, there's been a pretty rapid decline. He hasn't scored a significant innings in a while. It's sort of similar to Owen Morgan as well, who hasn't really performed up to those heights since 2019. Where one of the highlights of his World Cup was the 146 not out, I think, against Afghanistan, where he hit like 16 sixes. Do you think there's a key reason for why Aaron Finch hasn't been able to score and has been on a decline since the 2019 World Cup? Bearing in mind it's nearly been 3 years, so it's quite a long time of a decline.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is I was actually interested to talk about it today, and he just scored a 50 today, which is quite interesting.
Wow.
But yeah, so the thing is, like, obviously, we're going to talk more about today's match next week. So I guess, yeah, you can talk about Aaron Finch and Owen Morgan. Owen Morgan really struggled last year in the IPL. He could not get any form, which was really concerning, because they're both great players. We've seen them, Aaron Finch and Owen Morgan. They've for their respective countries, they've done absolutely incredible. But the thing is, Aaron Finch, yeah, he's been a bit of a decline since the World Cup. He was doing well, but he just maybe take some time off. Someone like Ben Stokes, he's a great player, but he had some issues with the mental side, so he took some time off cricket. So if Aaron Finch ever feels like he needs that, then maybe not too much, because obviously he needs to come back and get that time to form, because like he's not got that many years left, because he can't just take too many breaks. But I think maybe have a short term, just quick short break in cricket, maybe go back to the BBL in Australia, something like that, and just keep batting. He's just got to keep batting. That's what I think. And he's, batsmen that are out of form, there's no point just trying to find some form and just looking for runs in every single match you play. You've got to have some matches where you're just there to stay. You just got to face as many balls as possible, just to get back into a bit of touch, which is what Aaron Finch needs to do at the moment, which we'll see how he continues after his 50 today. But I just think that's what he's going to keep doing, just keep batting and just look to find some more touch. Owen Morgan, just see how he does when he next plays for England. If he plays in the IPL ever again, I'm not sure. But yeah, wherever. I'm really interested to see what happens to them too, and how they go about trying to find their form and trying to find their performances again.
The reason why this decline is actually so big as well is because he's coming towards the end of his career. He's 35 years old. He is the captain ODI and T20I teams for Australia, but with his performances, he's going to be considering his spot as well. So I think it is really important he, start scoring 50s. As you said, he scored one this match, but hopefully continue that run. I think it's also to do with, I don't know, to me, it sort of just seemed like a batsman who didn't really care that much when I was watching him play. I saw a couple of his dismissals and I watched it. I've been following a little bit. Like the way he's getting out is sort of just like the most, it's not like the typical Aaron Finch, brutal batting, but controlled batting. It was more like, I'm just going to swing at the bat and swing at the ball and hope for the best and get out really easily. It wasn't, Aaron Finch always has this like sort of charisma around him, very strong batter, but also he's in control. It's not as if the bowler's controlling him, but it's not looking like that anymore. It's looking like the bowler's controlling him. So that's something for him to look at, I think. I think it's just got to, even if you're going in the worst run of form, you got to stick to what you're good at. You can't just, ugly swipes at the ball that just for sake of it, because the ball's nearby you isn't going to help. It's going to get you out. And he's seen that, I think. But yeah, I think it's just got to be really careful. Another highlight of this week, I think, Lucknow Super Giants versus Mumbai Indians. For me, as a Mumbai Indian fan, this is a match we were hoping to win, just to get rid of that loss streak, but we did lose this match. And primarily, well, there was the bowling was at fault pretty much, but there was also KL Rahul's pretty amazing century. KL Rahul, to me, would you agree with this? I think he's a bit of an understated player in the IPL and generally in cricket. He's scored so many 50s in the IPL. He's been ever present for in the top run scoring charts for various different franchises over the last few years. Do you think he's a bit of an underrated player in general?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit underrated. I think he is, like, people are coming to know him now and starting to rate him now. But I think like last couple of years he was doing great. But even in India, he wasn't. I don't think now he does. But a few years ago, he didn't have a fixed place in the side, which is not good. But I thought he was doing pretty well in the IPL and everywhere he was playing. So I just think he was underrated. But I think now he's getting some. He's made a statement, and obviously he's getting some people are starting to rate him. And I just think he needs to continue what he's doing. It's difficult sometimes when people just don't. You're underrated, and people just don't rate you. All you can do, you can't really talk. You can't say anything because they're not going to listen. So you kind of just have to continue your performances and keep going. So it's difficult for KL Rahul, but I just think he's got to continue his excellent run so far. I think he's hit so many runs so far, and just think he needs to continue this and just continue his excellent form and just keep going with an excellent statement, and people will start to know who he is. And yeah, I would have to agree with it. He's a little underrated.
Yeah, I think people do know who he is, like especially in India and generally. I think he's become very like. I think the IPL, I think he's just a bit understated, just because he isn't like when you think of IPL, you think of people like Virat Kohli, Chris Gale, AB de Villiers, and you think of like these big players. You don't really think about KL Rahul, but even though he's probably been the last couple of seasons, he's been the top scorer, I think. So it's just a bit of him. I think that he has a shot of captaincy for India. With Rohit Sharma struggling for form internationally and in the IPL, where for IPL is like the main tournament for players to get form back in, especially in India. Do you think KL Rahul has a chance to become captain for long term? I think he's like 29 now. I'm not sure. So he's got at least a few years, 5 years ahead of him. Do you think he could be like the next captain after as the Virat Kohli era sort of ended?
Definitely, I think Rohit Sharma was definitely just a temporary captain. I'm sure he's not gonna continue on for much longer. Obviously, he's struggling to perform. We all know he's a great player, but he's definitely struggling to perform at the moment, IPL and internationally. So I think KL Rahul, he's definitely looking at a leadership role. I'm not sure he's a vice captain of India at the moment, but I just think KL Rahul is definitely looking in the future. He's got so many years to go. 8, 9 years, he can continue on playing and just think he's definitely maybe a long-term success of the captaincy.
Mm. The last match we're going to talk about in the highlights of the week is Gujarat Titans versus Chennai Super Kings. This was a good match because there's two standout batting performances. One by David Miller, who's been a bit on and off in his career so far. He's done pretty well for South Africa, at times. In the IPL, not as well. And also Gaikwad, who scored 73 or 48. Miller's was 94, not out of 51. You might have noticed we're talking a lot about batting innings, just because I feel like this week's quite batting dominated as such. There were a lot of clear stand-up batting performances. There weren't as many good bowling performances. But anyway, I think we'll start with David Miller. 94 not out of 51. It was a stunning innings, and it really catapulted Gujarat Titans, and it gave them the win. Excuse me. With David Miller, he's not really your household name, even though he's a really good batter. He has that power to completely change an innings. He sort of reminds you of A.B. de Villiers. He comes in normally 4 or 5, and he's done that. He's played a lot of different franchises in his IPL career. And he played for Rajasthan Royals last season, didn't really click. Gujarat Titans now. Why do you think he started scoring runs now? Why do you think, was there something that Gujarat Titans gave him that that other franchises didn't, and that platform? Well, what do you think has just made it change, Zaid?
It's a difficult one. I'm not really sure. David Miller, he's a good player. He's obviously shown last couple of innings in the IPL doing really well. I just think maybe, it might just be like it might just be something in the Gujarat Titans, in that camp somewhere, maybe coaching staff, maybe the players that he's talking to, the coaches, in that coaching staff, in that dressing room, and maybe the people, the mentors he's talking to, maybe that's kind of helped him to gain some like strength and mentally and being able to show what he can actually do, which is excellent. But yeah, I just think it's something like that. It's not a clear thing to me how he's able to score now or do well, because everyone knows that he is a great player. He has so much capability. We knew that in 2016 T20 World Cup, for example, he did well there. Then just continued. Then he kind of went quiet, and I just think it might just be the dressing room change that's got him back on track.
See, if we compare last season, this season, I think last season he had he was coming in quite late towards the very end of the innings, last couple of overs, didn't have any time to settle himself and actually perform in innings. As a number, he was probably batting like 5, 6, sometimes even 7. This season, though, in this match against CSK, I think he came in like 24 for 3 or something, 3 wickets down very quickly. Do you think that the fact that he was given a lot of time to settle in, he came in like at the 5th, 6th over, 15 overs to bat, to make to produce an innings. Do you think that's really helped him, giving him that opportunity to shine just because he has a lot more time rather than coming in and having to slog it and then scoring either just getting out very quickly or scoring like a lot of runs off like a couple of balls, 20 off 10, 14 off 6, for example. Do you think that the time has really helped him?
Yeah, actually, I just think maybe it's that finisher role isn't actually suiting him. Maybe that's not actually his sort of role. Maybe he kind of forced himself into it because we all know he can hit hard. Maybe it's that actually he should bat slightly up the order, 4, 5, and then just give himself time to build an innings, as he said. And he can power through the later stages when he's actually looking like he's enjoying himself and he's looking in form. So I think it might be that his lower order position just wasn't for him. And I think maybe higher up the order in the upper middle order, something 4 or 5 might be more suited to him.
I think also with Hardik Pandya missing, he made a very good use of that opportunity. So hopefully, Gujarat Titans will see this and see the fact that they lost wickets early and he came in, and hopefully if this situation comes again, keep him as a number 5. But if we lose a couple of wickets early, bring him in to sort of steady the ship but keep the run rate flowing, because 94.51 is a very good, he scored runs very quickly, which is impressive. Anyway, the second innings we're going to talk about is Ruturaj Gaikwad's innings, 73 off 48. I think the key thing that we have to mention as well is that the 50 that he scored was off 37 balls. So the next 23 runs are scored off 11. He hasn't really clicked this IPL, and if you look at 50 of 37, immediately you see that it was not a fast 50. It was a pretty slow 50. Do you think this patient approach is really helping his performances? Considering last season, he lit up the IPL, he scored loads of runs, nearly 600 runs, I think. This season hasn't clicked. Do you think that the fact that he's taking a lot of time to score 50 and then accelerating, do you think that's really helping him as a batter?
Absolutely. I think that especially when you're really in need of runs, you've got to take your time, and it's just kind of like that thing that's going to happen to you automatically. When you're struggling to score, you're not going to try to go hard at the beginning. You're really definitely going to, especially as an opener, you're going to try to take a little bit more time. Obviously, not taking too much time. 50 or 37 isn't that slow, but it's not the fastest we've seen, but it isn't too slow. It's not like 50 or 45 or something. So I think it's more like Gaikwad. He looked so much more comfortable in that innings after he got going. When he was on like 20 or 14 or whatever, and after that, he was just looking pretty comfortable, and he was able to accelerate after he got to 50. So I think a patient approach is definitely better for him, especially after you're really struggling for runs.
I think this is 100%. One thing for certain is that it's a good learning experience for him. If you're struggling, or if the conditions are tough, you've got to dig in. Even in a T20 match, 20 over, 120 balls, that's a lot of time to bat. And there's always opportunity to score in the middle overs when bowlers, putting on spinners, for example, or in the death overs where you just get for a license to hit. There's different opportunities. As an opener, you've got to score runs. That's the one staple. Even if you don't score them too quickly, that's up to the rest of your batters. 4, 5, 6 to start scoring quick runs. But yeah, on to the next part of this episode, which is we're just going to talk about the who we think is a top wicket taker, who will be the top wicket taker for this season, also the top run score prediction. So I think top wicket taker this season. See, at the moment, I think it is Umesh Yadav, but I don't really know. It's a tough one for me. I think Umesh Yadav, if he can sustain his performances, I think he could easily continue. But that's the thing; he's got to sustain his performances. Otherwise, he's not really gonna. He won't be able to. He won't be able to keep it up. I don't really know. Maybe. I think Chahal has a chance. But yeah, I think at the moment, sorry, I'm wrong. Umesh Yadav's, I think it's Chahal at the moment with 17 wickets in 6 matches. But you know what? I think I've decided. I think it's Natarajan by far, just because I'm a fan of him, and I think he's a really good bowler, and I'm just hoping that he's taken quite a few wickets this season already, so hopefully he can contain that, and the fact that he's got that pinpoint Yorker, I think just puts him further than the rest. Who do you think is going to be the top wicket taker of this IPL?
Me, it's got to be Chahal. He's doing really well. I think he just got a 5 for today as well, which is really, really good. So I just think this year, I think top 5, top 10 even is going to be dominated by leg spinners, especially. I think he's done so well. And just funny thing I've just noticed that I'm a leg spinner and I've gone with a leg spinner, and you're a left arm seamer and you've gone with Natarajan, who's a left arm seamer. It's quite interesting. So yeah, so I think it's going to be he's Yuzvendra Chahal. I just think he's really good, and he's consistently performing, which is excellent. But a lot of contenders, Natarajan's up there, and some like Umesh Yadav, but I think it's going to be Chahal.
Yeah, why do you think? Why is it that I'm just looking at the top wicket takers now? I think in the top 10 there are 1, 2, 3, 4 leg spinners. Why leg spinners? Finding it especially good in the IPL. And they've done it last season as well. You had Rashid Khan, Chahal at the top as well. Why are leg spinners finding it taking so many wickets in the IPL?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I'm not really sure about that, because like these sorts of leg spinners that maybe because like the pitches it hasn't really turned much. I think yesterday Roll he had a pretty decent turning pitch, but other than that, it hasn't turned much. But I just think a lot of these spinners, like Hasaranga or Chahal, these sorts of bowlers, they're not just one leggy, that they've got the googly as well. Someone like Chahal as well. These Chahal and Chahal, these sorts of bowlers, they've all got their googly, and they've got other variations. So it might just be that these guys are really enjoying themselves with the different variations that they're bowling. And I just think might be some stuff on the pitch as well, maybe some bounce, or it might just be that a lot of the batsmen, they're playing for the turn, but they're not getting enough turns. So I just think it's stuff like that. I just think it is a couple of combinations of things that are helping leg spinners dominate this year.
Yeah, I think it's also got to do with the fact that leg spinners to the right-handed batter, which is a more common batter, they're turning it away from the right-handed leg spinners, turning away from the right-handed batter. So it's a lot more chance to get out because it's turning away, and that's why player like Liam Livingston, who can bowl off spin to a left-hander and leg spin to a right-hander, turns it away and he takes wickets as well, even though he's a part-timer. I think the fact that he's just turning it away to the batter means that they're slashing at it and therefore hitting it a lot higher up and getting a lot of catches rather than turning into them, which is they'll find it a lot more in their comfort zone to hit it straight down the ground or just hit it leg side. In terms of top run scorer, at the moment it's Josh Buttler, and by quite far, considering he's just scored a century as well. So he's on 375. Second is Shreyas Ayah with 236. I think a surprise in the top 10 is Shimron Hetmeyer, who you haven't really seen very much in the top 10, 223. Livingston, 224. For me, I've got to say Josh Buttler. As an England fan, obviously, Josh Buttler, 375 runs already, not even half the season. He should be looking to get at least 700 runs. Push push Rajasthan Royals into the semis and hopefully get them the IPL title, because they could possibly do that well. With Josh Buttler in this type of form, averaging 75 and top score of 103, I think he could easily score 700 runs and really propel them and score big totals. How about you? What do you think?
I'm definitely going with Josh Buttler. Like, he's looked so good so far. He's got centuries. He's got everything. He's only halfway through the season. He's got 2 centuries, which is absolutely incredible. And he's played 6 games, something like that. So he's got to be Josh Buttler. Like, no questions asked there. I just think he's just looking too good, and I don't think anyone's going to be able to catch him.
Yeah, no, me neither. It's just, a 100-run gap already. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.